Hello everyone, this is Suprej Venkat from Throttle and Tails. In today's episode of Ride Smart, Ride Far, I'm going to share 7 techniques that I use when I'm off-road. The first technique that's going to help you while off-roading is standing. It's needless to say, it's been covered in numerous episodes, but still, I want to reiterate this point. The first thing that standing gives you is you could look way ahead. See, especially in terrain like this, where there's a lot of undergrowth, there could be stones, there could be rocks, and there could be tight turns. You don't know what's around there. So standing gives you that visibility. So apart from eyesight, the main benefit of standing is the bike is free to move under you, because when you're off-roading, there's loose traction, the bike wants to move in different directions, but then when you're sitting, you're forcing it to follow a certain path, and when the bike doesn't do, that's when you fall off. But when you're standing, the bike is free to move. You could move your weight around to actually put traction at the point that you want. What standing actually doesn't mean is standing and holding and locking the handlebars like this. It's not going to work. Likewise, I see that when people are standing, they're very stiff on the body, and they're just standing still. I mean, that's not going to help either. So when standing actually benefits, if you're moving freely like the flow of a river, your weight should be moving around the bike in all the directions, not just forward or back, not just up and down, not just to the side. When weight actually works to your advantage is when you use your ankles and you're actually able to pivot around. So when you use all of these parts, you're using your elbows, you're using your knees, your hips, your ankles, and you position yourself depending on which way the bike wants to go. That's when standing actually, really helps you ride. Because let's say you're, taking a left turn. Now, by weighting the outside part of the bike, you're increasing the traction to the right side of the bike, and your bike moves nicely. So what good standing feels like is you should feel weightless. What I mean by that is, you should be able to take your, arms off loosely, and you should still feel, you're not balanced or forced or pushed around. That's how good standing feels. The second technique is weighting the pegs. So what do we mean by weighting the pegs? When the tire is straight, obviously there's more surface area, and there's more grip. Now when the bike is turning or leaning, the contact surface reduces. So now by weighting the peg, what you're doing is, if the bike is turning right, you're counterbalancing and putting your weight on the opposite side and trying to push the bike down. So the bike is more vertical while turning. That increases the surface area and gives you more grip. So the way you could practice it is by just sitting down on a paved surface when you're riding. When you're riding on a tarmac road, just try applying a little bit of pressure on your outside leg. See how the bike wants to lean, and get used to that feeling. Once you're comfortable doing it, sitting, then maybe go off-road and try weighting the pegs. But technically for off-road riding, if you're able to put the weight on the opposite side in which you're turning, it'll give you more stability and more control. The third technique is trail braking. It's a brilliant technique, but then hardly used. I use trail braking even on tarmac, to be honest, especially when I'm doing fast switchbacks, and especially when I'm coming downhill, and on tarmac switchbacks, I slightly use trail braking with the rear brake to move the weight a little bit to the rear. That's what it does. It just stabilizes the bike very nicely. Yeah, so the way to do trail braking is you don't stomp on the rear brake, but you gently press it. So the idea is you should feel the brake pads kiss against the rotor. That's the feeling you should get. So what that does is it transfers the weight slightly to the rear, and it balances the bike nicely. And especially when you're riding in sand, for example, you want the weight to be as back as possible, because you don't want the front wheel to get stuck. So there also you could use trail braking. Even while throttling, you could keep giving slight trail braking to try and move the weight as back as you can. The fourth technique I'm going to speak about is floating the front. So what I mean by that is, I'm going to show you 2 clips here. In the first one, I'm closing the throttle, And you could see how the front wheel is actually digging in more into the gravel. And in this clip, I'm actually giving it more throttle, and you could see how the front is lifting up. That's the technique here. Now, if you are in loose terrain, it's very important to keep the rear weighted so that your front doesn't get stuck or dig into the terrain. When the front digs in, that's when the rear tries to overtake the front, and you'd have a fall. So learn this floating the front technique, which is nothing but just throttle. When you feel your front is digging in, and what that will do is move the weight to the back and lift up your front slightly so that you're able to clear that section. The fifth technique, and probably my favorite, is slipping the clutch. I know some people don't like to do that, but these bikes are meant for it, and I find that I have the most control when I'm actually slipping the clutch, especially in places like tight corners, even in, uphills, when I'm doing switchbacks. I'm always at the friction point of the clutch and giving throttle at the same time, because that gives me the leverage. If I want to go faster, I can. If I want to go slower, I can, but I'm in full control because, the clutch gives me that precise control that just the throttle wouldn't give me. Let me just show you what I mean by slipping the clutch. So I'm in first gear here, and at this friction point, I'm just giving the throttle, and I'm just going on like this. The sixth thing is vision. Again, covered numerous times, but the number of people that you see, especially on switchbacks, that just don't look around, it's mind-blowing. So, you have to consciously practice this, I find. You've got to look where you want to go. You've got to look ahead. And, theoretically, it's very simple, right? When you're looking, your body moves in the direction. When your body moves in the direction, the vehicle follows. But, as part of this 7 technique series, I wanted to cover vision as well, so that you consciously practice it. Maybe do figure of 8s, and notice, record yourself, and see whether you're looking around before you're turning. Are you looking down? So these kind of things you could practice in a controlled environment, when doing figure of 8s. So the 7th technique we're going to speak about is emergency braking, especially when you're doing trail ridings. You could have wild animals. Today morning I was hearing some elephants around the part where I'm shooting in Karnataka. And I might have had to do an elephant turn, but luckily I didn't have to. But there are situations where things run across, animals run across, and you need to do an emergency braking, or you've not been looking ahead and you suddenly see that the road's ended, or so it's obviously very important to understand the nuances of emergency braking, especially off-road. The basics remain the same. You're standing up, you're looking ahead, your body's loose, and the mode that I prefer for off-roading is Enduro Pro. What that does on the BMWGS is the front is an integral braking, as you know, and it leaves the ABS on for the front, whereas the rear, the ABS is switched off. I think that's a better compromise. On dirt, given ABS is going to slow you down, especially in loose traction. But on the flip side, if you're not used to, controlling a front wheel lock, that's even more scarier. So, when you're starting out, my suggestion would be to leave the Enduro Pro mode on and squeeze the front brake and then support it with the rear pedal as well. So the sequence is front brake, squeeze and hard and hold it. You will feel a pulsating sensation. That is the ABS working, so do not let go of the lever. Keep it pulled in an emergency situation, and the rear fully locked in as well. That I believe is the quickest and safest way to stop without the front washing out. If you're obviously a very advanced rider and you could handle the front wheel locking without an ABS, then by all means try it. But then for anybody starting out, I wouldn't suggest it. Enduro Pro mode, front lever quickly in, clutch in, looking ahead, and front the rear lever pushed in. I find that's the quickest way to stop a big enduro bike like this off-road. Let me show you how it's done. So as you could see from that emergency braking, my rear wheels were locking, and my front handlebar wanted to go a little bit to the left or right. I just let it do that because I'm staying loose, and this is loose traction. There are stones, the surface is uneven, so the bike would want to do stuff, right? But then if I'm holding on to it tight, it's going to just wash away under me. So yeah, I think that's how you do an emergency braking. So that brings us to the end of the episode. To recap, we covered 7 points. The first one was standing and the importance of standing. How do you, just standing on its own is not going to really help you. You need to be moving all parts of your body, right from your ankle to your knees to your hips. Everything moves in harmony, along with depending on the bike's weight. And the second thing we looked at was pegging pressure. How by putting pressure on the outside of the motorcycle, you could corner nicely because the traction area of the wheel increases because you're counterbalancing the bike. The third thing was floating the front wheel, how by throttling through a loose surface, the front wheel is not actually digging in, but it's actually in the air. So that reduces, not in the air, but then, it's not tucked into the ground. It's right above the surface. So the chance of digging in and falling down is lower. The next thing we looked at was slipping the clutch, how that is one of the most underrated skills, but that's something that I use every single time. I'm always at the friction point of the clutch. I find that gives me the best control of the motorcycle. If I want to throttle, I'm able to let go of the clutch a little bit more and throttle. If I want to slow down, I just need to pull the clutch a little bit in. So I find slipping the clutch as one of the most effective ways for slow speed control. Then we looked at trail braking, especially in terrains where I'm doing switchbacks and stuff. Having a little bit of trail braking with the rear brake actually moves the chassis, the weight of the chassis to the back, and the bike is much more stabilized. And the sixth thing that we looked at was vision and the importance of vision. We've covered that a number of times, but I will keep repeating it because arguably that is one of the most important things. Where you look is where your bike is going to go. And the final thing we looked at was the emergency stop, how you have to stay nice and relaxed. Enduro Pro mode on the BMWGS, front lever pulley pulled in, and feel that pulsating sensation, but don't let go, keep it locked in. And the rear brake also locked in. Enduro Pro mode, the rear does not have ABS, so the wheel's going to lock, but then together they work beautifully. So that's the way I do it. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this episode. If you think I've missed anything, or if you do things any differently, please share in the comments. I'd love to learn from you as well. Thank you very much.